Hello again, I'm Mark. Welcome back to Three Bridges and another update. So this is the next bridge I'm going to work on, and it's one of the largest bridges on the layout so far. So we're just at the end of Harrow on the Hill station, so that's, you can see that in the distance, and this is the bridge that sort of frames the London end of the Harrow on the Hill station. It's got sort of quite a wide road across it, the pavements, and then just beyond where the taxi is, there's a row of shops, and they sort of sit on a separate structure that is supported underneath, almost unlike pillars. So it's like an add-on bridge, I think, to the original road bridge. And then there's all the cabling. I'll put an image up on the screen so you can sort of see the bridge from the station end. So I started this bridge, it was the last bridge or last part of scratch building, I suppose, I did in Yorkshire, so over 2 years ago, and I sort of stopped, partly because we were going to move house, so I had to pack up, but also I didn't really know where it was going to fit on the layout, and I took a bit of a gamble with the size of it. So things that still need to be finished, so it's got the main sort of road structures pretty much there, and the support structures underneath, but I didn't know how far at the back it would go. So there is a gap here which I can extend now to the back seam, and that covers my east coast west coast line, and I'll have the road sort of splitting a little bit, so I'm going to force a perspective there. And then this side, so looking down the bridge, he wants to come across here, and I'm going to have some archways in front of my goods yard, so I'll sort of curve the road around. The scene stops here anyway for the goods yard board, and then the road also cuts round and wants to head down to sort of the front of the Harrow on the Hill station over there. So again, I've also got to build a road down, but for this sort of next couple of weeks, I'm just going to focus on this structure, the main part of this structure. I won't worry about the front part, but I will complete the back part. And then with the shops, so using images from Google Street Map, I've got basic front structure, and then the back as you see it, so you basically see into the back of these little shops and cafes and units, and as I said, they all sit on more of a column structure. And then also along here, I'll show another image up, there's a load of cable trunking for the underground wires that cross from one side to the other, so I also want to model that. So I'm going to work on the bridge in two parts. So this episode I won't bother about the shops, I'll take those away, and I'll just focus on getting the main bridge structure finished at the back, and we'll see where we get to at the front. Okay, so I've gathered all the bits up back downstairs, cleared the desk off so I can have as much space as possible to build this. So I'll assemble the bits that I've got currently so you can understand the basic structure. So originally I had a paper template for it all, but I've lost it somewhere in the move. But effectively the main bridge is a platform, and it sits on these structures. They're just freestanding, and it's not critical that they're joined together. So I designed it that way because I didn't really know where the tracks were going to lie. So so that's going to be platform 6 from Harrow on the Hill, 5, 4, 3, and then 2 and 1, and these are the 2 Chiltern lines. So I can position these up in the loft between the tracks. It's fine, and basically the bridge sits on it. So the only critical dimensions are this piece here, which will sit there between the back wall. And basically that's where my east coast west coast lines are going through. So first bit is to make up the rest of the cardboard structures at the front and the back, and then I can just pop it back to the loft, test it again, and then carry on working on the road and the pavements and the road down, and I'll get all of that sorted first. There's a crossing here, so I sort of half prepped it, so I've got to think about that as well. You see those markings, and then I'll worry about the shop part in another week. But they basically sit on these structures underneath, so again they sort of sit behind. So there's 3 of these, and these obviously want weathering up as well, and actually it's iron girders, and so that it's like a metal structure, I think, that holds the whole of the shops. Right, anyway, we'll see where we get to. That's me rambling for 6 minutes and we haven't even started. Okay, I'll try to show you how I build up the bridge structure. So I use a mix of 2 1.5, 1.5mm card. So for anything structural, it's the 2mm card. So the bridge deck is made up of 2 layers, and then there's just some cross struts to separate it and strengthen it. Okay, and then all I've done is using my template that I had in the loft, I've cut the top deck size I want, put it in place, worked out the underside. So when I built the bridge, knowing that I would need to extend it at some point, I left the underside with this gap. Okay, and then struts inside so I could slide them in. I didn't leave them both the same length, so that I knew that I could sort of split the join so it would strengthen it. And then I use wood glue. I don't use, it is PVA based, but I don't use PVA arts glues. They're just too wishy-washy and too much water. So wood glue will grab within a couple of minutes. It takes about 20 minutes to dry and be full strength, but it will grab very quickly. So you don't have to mess around. And then fill up 2 layers, put a bit of weight on, and it's good to go. So that will slide in there. So what I'll do now is I'll just put some glue on the various tabs, slide it in and join it all up. So whilst it's drying, we have snow. We get snow. We've had it about once a year since we moved in, maybe twice, but not a lot. So this is, I think, the heaviest snow we've had so far. East coast of Scotland, not seeing a lot. But anyway, so what are we up to? 1 inch. The fun bit, if you don't live in Scotland, so all the gritters have a name, and there's a website you can go and track where they are. So our local gritters are Grittly Bear and Polar Express, and there's some other funny names around the country. There's about over 100 gritters, so I'm just trying to... Skid Vicious, I think, was the one that, probably from my era. There's a lot of music themed ones as well. Check it out, it's good for a laugh. And of course, scratch building wouldn't be complete with a bit of YouTube. So this morning we've got Go By or Go Home over, so Third Rail Thursday. It's a Saturday evening he does it, which is early hours Sunday morning, so I can only watch it and catch up. He's building a giant factory structure. Interesting to see how that one turns out. Okay, so I've given it a couple of minutes. It'll be okay to pick it up. So that's the end section. So it doesn't always go smoothly. I put it up on the wrong way around. If you looked, remember the eagle-eyed of you have spotted I got the angles wrong. So basically I'd flipped them the wrong way. So I'll re-glue it all up again and you'll see. There's a couple of rules of scratch building. So mark the pieces, write on them, and do a dry fit to a check first. Anyway, I forgot those 2 basic rules. this, I realise this camera angle is also distorting it, so this looks like a parallel piece to you, okay, but it's not. It's an angled piece. So effectively, when I'd done it the first time round, instead of having the thin end at this end, I'd got a thick end and done it that way. So ripped it all apart, re-glued it back together, and then I realised that the underside part, which sits under here, I'd measured up from there so it was wider, so I had to trim that down as well. Anyway, we've got there. This all gets covered over, and the important bit is that is the reference point to the back of the back seam board. So I'm building out that way. I can, if I've added on an extra millimetre, it doesn't make any difference. So very briefly, the end section's done with the road and the pavement sections, and then these two sort of grey boxes are just I think it's a T-box cut up just to show where I'm thinking of having two buildings at the back, just as the road sort of bends, sort of forces the perspective round. So and then at this end we have the extension bit that comes out over the end of the goods yard, so there'll be a bridge across this section here, and then I've got space for another building to sort of drop in here up in the loft, so that'll hide a bit of that corner. So mainly the view from the front is sort of like that, and then the other view of the bridge is sort of at this angle, so I'll sort of see into that side street at the back. So maybe have some thoughts about what I do there, whether I just keep it as the white or if I create a sort of fake background again. Anyway, on to road markings and crossings and railings next. Okay, so the next thing to work on is the road markings. So for the roads, I've used three different approaches so far. So I've used, so this area here shows it. This is the scale scenes paper, which has the printed tarmac, but you only get one sheet, so a lot of those sort of defects start to re-show. For this one, I've been using, so it's 3000 grit emery paper, and mainly for the, I've got sort of 3.5, 4, and 2.5. It's more for the lighter colour of the grey, so this camera doesn't want to focus in it. But what you can do with this paper is you can scratch it, and so these marks down the centre are just basically using my nail scratching on, but the lines probably need to be a bit thicker. So the other option is obviously to paint the road, which I did do on the Rossmore Road Bridge, which I've got at Marylebone. Anyway, this is emery, so I'm going to give a go with using a very pale wash of flat white spray paint. So I just did a test section here, so I basically cut out a section from a film, 2 out of 3. This one I just put the brush on too heavily and just saturated it, and it didn't like it, so I'll go for more of a faded white look, and so it doesn't look like the road's been freshly painted. And then I've got a zigzag to do as you get near the road crossing down the edges. So this is the no parking zigzag. So let's see how we get on. So to create the mask, I've basically just used a strip of white paper and cut the sections out that I want, and then basically literally holding it down with my finger so it's not stuck down or anything. I know you could put a load of tape on and do it that way, but I've no idea what the taping is going to do to my road. Anyway, I'm going to start at this end. So this is the end you see closest to the layout, and as you move down the bridge, which is getting further away, I'll be able to see it less anyway, so we'll see how that works out. As you can see, I'm getting that faded look I wanted, so I'll just carry on down the road. It seems to be working. As you can see, it's not turned out too bad. I struggled a little bit at the zebra crossing zigzags. A couple of them look a bit grubby, but you're not going to see it up close anyway, so I'm not going to worry about it too much, as the extra paint sort of emphasises it. So the last bit is just to put the zebra crossing on. So I've made up a new template. It'll do sort of about a third of the road, and then I'll work my way over. So that probably took about a minute of spraying. That I'm just putting down the tiniest amounts so it doesn't bleed underneath, and it just gives that lovely pale look that the zebra crossing's been run over by vehicles so many times. The paint's in need of replacement. Well, as a quick fix, it's worked quite well. The other thing I'm finding is if I feel I've put down too much paint, I just back off on the paint, just leave the air to just dry it. This is just acrylic and IPA, it dries really fast. So from the image of the street, there's railings either side of the road up to the crossing, and it's the aluminium close fenced ones. So there's an easy way to describe it, but my childhood memory is not the modern fencing, but very much these old I suppose steel ones where you could sit on the top bar and put your feet on the next bar down, or you could climb through them to cut across the road. So I'm going to put these in, and I sort of done them up in a dirty white as I sort of remember them, painted with rusting at the joints. So I'll get those in place. Back again, it's early morning. I just took my wife to the station for 6:30 this morning for the first train down to Birmingham. So get up, we might as well get on with stuff. I forgot to say that, so the railings is some of this. It's the Fowler I picked up about a year ago, don't know where from, but not whilst I was over in Germany, but I'll probably look out for some more when I am over there. It's probably easier to buy. And with David keeping me going on his latest update, which is always interesting to spot. I do really admire the sort of stuff he manages to achieve. Anyway, I'm drilling holes in cardboard to install railings. So it's going okay. And then obviously I was there thinking, oh, I need to get some traffic lights, and then it was like, looked up an image and then spotted that there were no zebra crossing markings, because obviously traffic lights is a puffin crossing where you don't have the zebra crossing markings, and the zebra crossing markings means I need Belisha beacons. A bit of wire and a little bead on the top, so I'll paint that up in yellow, black and white. As this is set back in, I suppose, late 70s, early 80s, and in our village we still had zebra crossings and Belisha beacons. I'm not going to bother with traffic lights here, since I've already done the markings. Well, I'll carry on drilling holes and listening to David. Okay, well, it's probably as far as I can take it for the moment. I got everything in that I wanted, so I've not glued the railings in because I just know that I'll knock them over and snap them. So they're just sat in the holes, and I'll maybe glue them in once it's permanently up in the loft. So the road's all done. I've done a few sort of dabs of patches just to, because it's not always just pure grey, is it? So, and then I've got my Belisha beacons on my crossing. So I know modern crossings have the sort of the, I suppose, the orange or the yellow bricks with the textured surface to help blind people visually impaired people cross the road, but back in the early days when they sort of started lowering the curbs, they just dug it out and sort of laid an impression of tarmac to lower the curb down. So those textured bricks and all that came much later. And I've started on the shop structure that sits down the side of the bridge, so I'll be working on that next. So just to give you an initial idea of how that shop structure sits on the edge of the bridge. And then there's going to be, as I sort of pointed out earlier, there's another building that sits here, about up to where my hand is. And then there's another small section of bridge which I'll have. So I'll work out a rough size for this one as well whilst I'm building the shops, so that I can also just finish off this bridging edge, which is the viaducts over the goods yard as well. So yeah, really like it. Pleased to just get a bit more progress on it, having started it 2 years ago and then stuck it in a box and left it. So I think I said earlier on it was it's go via or go home, the site over in Canada that I follow. And as always, thanks for watching if you made it this far, and hopefully maybe catch you next week when a bit more progress on the shops at the back.